Hello everyone, how are you doing? I'm doing well. I advise you to subscribe to the channel and put a like. Did you do? Great. Now I propose to peppervy it to the topic of the video we have today is not usual, namely, what's the most difficult truth you've come to accept? Story 1. This lesson got me through the darkest times in my life. I was going through pure, utter hell and couldn't see straight, let alone work out how I should survive. I wanted to, and often did, yell and cry and beg and scream at the entire world for not pausing and acknowledging the pain, suffering that my life had become. The world didn't stop. Nobody else was sitting in the dark and suffering like me. Even those nearest dearest were still getting on with their lives, often as they were sitting right next to me, arm around my shoulders in comfort, sympathy. Their lives were still moving on. There is a line at the end of the movie Castaway, something like, "Tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide will bring?" Realizing that the world didn't care and certainly wasn't halting on its axis just because shit had gotten out of control for me, that got me through. It helped me to learn how to function in my new reality. It helped me look for the next sunrise, what the next tide would bring. It's a fucking tough lesson, but it's definitely the best and most helpful one I have learned. Story 2. I have lost a lot of people in my relatively short life. This is a quote that helped me get through it all. Once, an elderly general practitioner consulted me because of his severe depression. He could not overcome the loss of his wife, who had died 2 years before and whom he had loved above all else. Now how can I help him? What should I tell him? Well, I refrained from telling him anything, but instead confronted him with the question, "What would have happened, doctor, if you had died first and your wife would have had to survive you?" "Oh," he said, "for her this would have been terrible, how she would have suffered." Whereupon I replied, "You see, doctor, such a suffering has been spared her, and it was you who have spared her this suffering, to be sure, at the price that now you have to survive and mourn her." He said no word but shook my hand and calmly left my office. In some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. Viktor Frankl. Story 3. Yup, I try to remember that at the end of the day, no one actually gives a shit about me. The impact that I have on everyone's lives is not so substantial that they wouldn't be able to replace whatever role I have in their day-to-day lives with someone else. It's easy to get comfortable and feel like you're irreplaceable to others, but truthfully no one is. Even 10-year-long friendships and relationships can end in the blink of an eye. As grim as this reads off, it's a fact that I've come to learn, and it helps me deal with life. Story 4. For the past 2 years, I have been hopelessly in love with a friend of mine. We are both in our 20s. I wanted to give him whatever I could. I wanted to make him smile as often as I could, so I told him how I felt. And well, he didn't feel the same. He told me he didn't want a relationship right now. I didn't want to be a burden to him with how I felt, so there were a few occasions where I tried to leave. I told him that I wanted him to find someone to love and be happy with, even if I wasn't her. I didn't want to hold him back from that future. I didn't want to stand in the way of his happiness. Each time he pulled me back to him and insisted that I stay, so I did. We ended up getting physical, but even now he won't call me his. He won't tell me what he thinks of me or what sort of relationship he wants. So, this year I decided to move forward with my life. I didn't think it's healthy for either of us for things to continue the way things have been. I unfollowed him on Instagram and had his account unfollow me too. You can do that on the app these days, and I deleted the app off my phone soon after. We still text now again and work together. And I still love him very, very much, but I am making the slow steps to accepting the fact that we are only ever going to be friends. Told her I am accepting the fact that my love is unrequited. Story 5. One of the hardest lessons I've ever learned. I'm a very sentimental person who values the history and long friendships. Was in a 13-year-long friendship with my ex-best friend. Met her in 2007 when I was 15-16 and a sophomore in high school. Instantly became best friends. Graduated together. Was there for her every step of the way as she graduated beauty school. Got married at 22, then had her son at 23. Loved her unconditionally and unwaveringly. As the years passed, we just grew to have very different lives, and we started fighting about the stupidest shit literally all the time. I tried so many countless times to fix our relationship. So many times. Eventually, she gave me more anxiety and stress than joy, and so, in 2020, I finally cut her off. Haven't seen her since. Sometimes I still miss her, but I cannot tell you the overwhelming sense of peace I've had since cutting ties. I don't regret the choice I made. Story 6. Same, I had a lifelong friendship with this girl. We are 2 months apart. Our mothers worked together at the time and were friends since birth, almost literally. Did everything together like school, Sunday school, and teen activities. We even had our first kid 15 days apart from each other. We were thick as thieves. She was always a on-the-go type of girl, I was too. But I slowed it down when I had my first kid. We both went to live in different cities because of our husbands. She called it quits with her husband 2 years after the kid was born, came back to her mom's place. I was living in my husband's city and came back to live in my town because it was cheaper for us as we had our second right after. She came to live in the house next to mine with her second husband and second kid. We were thrilled the gang was back together. Our kids could grow together. Her second husband was a total criminal type of guy, younger than we were and didn't want to work. One night she left the house and we were told by some people they didn't pay rent, so they moved because they were going to be evicted. This was like 7 years ago. We went on with our lives, moved to a bigger house the next year, but always wondering what was made of her. Turned out she had her third kid, left oldest in her parents' care, and was supporting the guy and his family all on her own. The moment she called it quits, she moved out, but he kidnapped the 2 younger girls and was missing for a month, all while showing up at night at her parents' place, breaking the door and saying he would kill them all, including her older girl that was not his. Police caught him, made him return the girls, and she was living with all 3 girls in a house near her parents for the last 2 years. I had my third kid in March. Our oldest kids are in the same classroom, so we crossed paths a bit in school meetings and such. I told her I was happy she left him and that she was remaking her life. We went for coffee a few times. All was going well. I didn't see her for a month or 2. Life happens, I guess. And my mom told me a few days ago she left the house, all 3 kids with her parents, and she was nowhere to be seen for 2 weeks. No one knows if she is with her ex or with a new guy. But I'm grieving again for the friendship. Story 7. I'm 37. Haven't seen or spoken to my mother for pushing 20 years. She was an alcoholic, which was something my dad kept hidden from my brothers and me our entire childhoods. She was always distant, but I was never able to really put a finger on why. And then I found out about her drinking, and it really opened my eyes to all the times in my life she chose alcohol over her children. My oldest daughter was born when I was 18, the moment my life revolved around someone else. She really just turned into her true self. What losers we were as sons. How being a mother led her to drink. How terrible we were as people. Any nasty thought a mother could have towards her children, she had towards us. It was hard, but I knew that's who she was and I couldn't be a part of it. So I just ceased contact. Every time a decent window of time would pass and I'd think maybe it was time to reconnect, I'd get a letter in the mail from her, telling me that I am a terrible son. Years have gone by and I've gone to quite a bit of therapy to understand why the decision was the correct one to make. I know it sucks, but it can get better. Story 8. I'm a dude. Throughout my life there is a type that I meet from time to time that absolutely hates me. They are always women. They see me as someone who has had life easy. I'm 50 now, but when I was young I was conventionally attractive, and I think they also felt I'd benefited from my looks. When I was in 6th grade, it was my English teacher. She hated me so much that she tried to get me in trouble for cheating when I wasn't cheating. She incorrectly graded my papers lower than my classmates, which I caught her out on. She would act nasty to me in class when I asked a question. Again, I get it. She saw in me some kid who'd had an easy life. Maybe her life was hard. In my 20s, at the start of my career, I worked in corporate accounting. A group of 4 women bullied me at that job incessantly. One, the worst of them, who was a superior of mine, called me a pedophile in front of my coworkers because my wife was young 20 when we married. Again, I think she felt like I was some dude who life came easy to. Another example was a lawyer I worked with in my 40s. Remember Nermal from Garfield? It feels like that was who they saw me as. They may have also been picking up on how I was effeminate. I always felt queer, but it took me 50 years to realize I'm transgender. People often called me a sissy or FG as a kid and assumed I was gay. Anyway, now that I'm 50 and I'm fairly senior at my company, it hasn't happened in a while. When I was young, I took it really hard. That bullying from girls crushed me and made me shy. I think the women themselves often felt like a guy is fair game for bullying for some reason. As if they think man can take it or something. They treated me like I was some womanizer who got his way with women, which couldn't be further from the truth. I was a virgin on my wedding night. I'm still with the same women 25 years later anyway. It took me a lot of living to realize that lots of women did like me, that I was likable, that it was a minority of people who had these strong feelings of hate about me. Story 9. Not op, but improving my health. I'm overweight. Cut back your food intake, exercise, and be smarter about what you eat. Make meal plans, work on sticking to them. Log your food, take your vitamins. It's general, but these choices to improve yourself are the difficult ones and require commitment and dedication. If you want some general advice to make your life better, save what money you can. Don't purchase things you don't need. Cut out back fast food and out food. It's unhealthy and expensive. Pay off your credit cards. Highest interest ones first. Stop smoking, drinking, exercise more. Eat less. Make a list of accounts you have online for your records. Scan important documents so you have a digital copy. Take care of your vehicle. It is an expensive investment. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Pay attention to cost per unit when purchasing things. A 24-pack of the beer I like at Walmart is $40 6x4 and only $28 at Costco. A membership pays for itself if I buy only 5 cases a year. Drink enough water. Don't cut out anything you enjoy. Learn to enjoy in moderation. Eating less food over time will shrink your stomach. You'll feel full with less. Make sure you are eating enough even if you aren't hungry. You need at least 1,200 calories a day. I will also say that taking the more difficult path sooner will lead to easier paths later. The efforts you make now will be easier than doing them later. Story 10. My best friend and protector, Lupin, has been with me for 13 years. It'll be his 14th birthday on the 15th of March. He's a Yorkshire Terrier with a heart of a direwolf. We've lived in 4 different places, but it's never mattered because being together is home. In the past 2 years, he's had 3 close calls. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life is watch him get older. I see how fragile he's become. He's got bad arthritis, chronic pain in his hip, can no longer hear, and is nearly blind. He sleeps most of the day. But he recognizes me. His nose is as good as ever, and despite his arthritis, he still dances for me in the morning after he pees. He also lets me hold him more now he's not as fiercely independent. It's my turn to take care of him as he's always been the one to take care of me. Lupin is a part of me. When he dies, a part of me is going to die too. It's inevitable, it's heartbreaking, and it's so fucking sad, but I'd do my entire life over again just to hold him for the first time. Amor fati, must love my fate. If there's an afterlife, I'd want Lupin to take me there. Life and death cannot be so cruel to not reunite us. Regardless, we'll always have home. Story 11. There are lots of people who act nice but really aren't good people. It's an act to manipulate and deceive people in order to benefit themselves or to fool even themselves into believing that since they act nice to people, the other shitty things they do are acceptable. Along those same lines, there are plenty of good people who aren't what we think of as nice. You've surely heard the term nice guys finish last. I fully believe that to be true because people that are always nice don't stand up for themselves or others because they're too preoccupied with being nice instead of doing what's right. Nice people get run over and taken advantage of in life. They also avoid tough conversations or topics. For instance, if I have a friend that is fucking up, I'm going to tell them because I care about them and want what's best for them. That's what real friends are for, is to call you on your bullshit or point out when something, someone, or a behavior is bad for you. A nice person is too afraid of saying something that may not be well received. I'm not sure I did a good job explaining this, but hopefully you get the gist. Story 12. This is huge for me. I birthed a mentally damaged child, the product of a rape, labeled a psychopath with sociopathic tendencies by all the mental health care available out there. She hates me for giving her fucked-up life and wishes I'd aborted her. I've lost. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. I haven't seen her in over 20 years, her choice. I worry constantly about whose lives she's out there destroying with her anger and sickness. She habitually lies about people just to see them in agony. She's accused many men of rape but refuses to report them to police. She will target married men, trick them into sex, then call their wives and claim she's pregnant. She never is, but that is my greatest fear, that she'll reproduce. As a child, she had to be watched closely or she'd hurt other children. She'd tell teachers I had stage 4 cancer and was dying for sympathy. Think a real live bad seed. I have to accept that I will never have a life with my child. I've lost. Story 13. Mine is similar. Except my mom never had a standard for me to reach. I just always thought if I said the right things or did the right things and tried to be a good person, eventually she would love me. I don't know that she ever did though. She had me when she was 17 and I think she always resented me. Accepting that was freeing. Now I can be a good person just because I like taking care of people whenever I can. And I don't need her approval or affection. Still sucked to figure it out though. Story 14. I made the mistake of offering my baby surprise pregnancy after a whole life of sterility to my best friend, as he and his wife were having a hard time getting pregnant. His first words in reply were, "I think I speak for both of us when I say that we won't be mad at you if you change your mind." I was giving plasma to make my bills. Dad wasn't in the picture and my mental health was eroding. I truly never thought that keeping my baby was even an option. By about halfway through my pregnancy, a lot had changed. And when I first felt my child kick, I knew I couldn't give them away. Keeping my baby ended a 30-year friendship. In hindsight, my child is worth 1,000 friendships, but it's still painful to think about how close we used to be and wonder if they ever have a kind thought or a happy memory, or if I'm just the villain in their story. Either way, it matters not, but yeah, even the friendships you never ever think you'll lose can end in an instant. Perhaps they had their own baby and still never came back around. Story 15. Wow, this is almost my exact situation, but the other way around. My closest girl best friend of 10 years and I, 22F and 23M, both thought about dating many times, and I left for university around the time we both had shared feelings for each other and shared our first kiss. I told her at the time we couldn't have a relationship since it wouldn't be fair to her. I'm back from university, and now she's with a good guy, it seems, and doesn't want to feel that way about me romantically anymore. Like you, I've decided to try and explore myself elsewhere with someone new. It's said that what's meant to be will come to you, but I also can't deny that right person, wrong time is a real thing. I'm super close with her family. She's told me so many times she loves how I make her feel. We have always had excellent chemistry, and we can burn a day hanging out together super easily. So I understand your situation more than you know. Unrequited love is a beach. Story 16. My first boyfriend that I had for many years and thought I would marry. I found out after a Google search that he had died. I hadn't seen or heard of him in 40 years. It was just surreal that this man that I had once loved so intensely was now gone. I've had a good life and am married to a wonderful man who has fulfilled my life. But still, I thought about this person through the years. Our parting was unresolved. I wished I could have at least caught up with him and found out how his life turned out. Story 17. I remember a dude I encountered once who was standing on the sidewalk screaming. When I gave him a wide berth, he started yelling, asking why no one would help him or talk to him. I had to yell back, considering the distance I wasn't getting any closer just in case. But I told him it's because standing on the street screaming scares people. He then told me about his problems. According to him, there was a group of people harassing him. His therapist had said to contact the police. The police said there was nothing they would do. I suggested moving, to which he said he didn't think he should have to move because someone else was harassing him. I said I was sorry, but there might not be anything else to do. He told me, sorry is a doing word. As in, I shouldn't say sorry if I wasn't going to do anything about it. All I could do was to continue on my way. But I still wonder, what exactly did he expect me to do? Story 18. You will hurt people. Sometimes people will attach to you unfairly. Sometimes people will have overbearing expectations for you, and other times you will just screw up. You cannot please everyone, sometimes not even your parents or the love of your life. You will always have some form of guilt, and there is no person or God who can make it go away. You cannot let the guilt destroy you. It is not a crime to be okay when you're trying to be better. If you hurt someone, do what you can to make it right. But even if they can't forgive you, you have to move on past the guilt. This is not an excuse to ignore the damage, but you will never make things right if you can't get out of bed or function. You do not need to atone through suffering of your own, no matter how tempting it is. You need to let yourself be okay. Story 19. I know what you mean, but I feel it's a bit of a cop-out to pretend you have zero direct control over your children's future. You can love them and show them how to be a good person, foster curiosity and independence. Or you can raise them so they are forever dependent on you and incapable on doing anything, or any of myriad of things. Once my kids are adults, All I can do is offer my help and guidance, and their path hopefully is their own. Until then, it's my literal responsibility to ensure I can raise them to be independent. Story 20. This is actually profound. It doesn't even mean that most of us have probably been assholes at some point. Even if you've been a morally unshakable person, many of your successes have probably in some way been at the expenses of others. The guy who had a crush on the woman you married, the players on the team that you beat, the person who was second best and didn't get the scholarship you got. No matter how nice you are to people, you'll probably always be the villain in those people's stories. Story 21. I had that happen with my best friend. He got into drugs and was living with me, and I kicked him out on the street one night due to him putting me in a very bad position. We don't talk for over 10 years. I reached out to him a few years ago and found out he lived in Tucson right as I was visiting there. We met up and had dinner and picked up right where we left off almost. We continued to talk on the phone and it was good. He died last year unexpectedly. I sure am glad I reached out and got some time with him before he passed. Story 22. A recent difficult one for me is that I dislike sex. I don't know what it's like for other people, but for me, it's just a very unpleasant experience. I only did for my ex-partner because she wanted to. The sex itself isn't the difficult truth, though, but the realization that it's completely unfair for me to even try finding a future partner knowing that now. The loneliness has been creeping in the past few months, but I can't do anything about it without being a terrible person, because of how unfair it'd be for me to pursue someone knowing I can give them something so fundamental. Story 23. I remember reading on another post about someone who worked at a hospital and saw a lot of people pass away. They remembered one married couple where the husband was in their care and passed away and the wife stayed right up until the final moments. After he passed, she got up on the bed and embraced and kissed him for quite a long time. I completely understand this, and I have no doubt I would be the same with my partner. The thought of him dying and never being able to cuddle or kiss him again is so unbearable that I'd be making the most of whatever time I had to do that at the very end. Story 24. Yes, exactly. It's good to keep things in perspective. Just because you're replaceable, what does that even mean? I don't even know we are replaceable. Like my best buddy's mother died and he's never replaced her. He still has a mom-shaped hole in his heart. Or these friends of the family who lost one of their 4 kids. The other 3 should replace the dead one, but they haven't. They're still absolutely devastated, and it's been 12 years, so I don't even know I agree that we're replaceable. Maybe sometimes in some relationships. But even if we are in every case, that still doesn't mean we aren't deeply loved and cared for. Story 25. It's awful and I hate it. Makes me feel I don't deserve to have friends sometimes, or it's karmic retribution for something I did in my past life or something. I had a steady best friend for 8 years, in the one place I stayed the longest. And the moment I left the country, she never spoke to me or even contacted me. None of my friends did, and I didn't really mind them. Just hers hurt so much. Every friendship I had since has been in shambles, mostly due to me hating their morals or something they said that really made me rethink how they are. Some friends are there, but I keep it an arm's length now. Well, and that's all we have. I hope you like the theme of this video. I ask you to support the channel with a like, subscribe, and Kalakolchikam. Well, and leave your comments. I will be glad to read them.